American scientists have successfully grown and attached a human ear onto the back of a mouse. The ethics are controversial.
For centuries, fishermen have spun harrowing tales of terrifying sea creatures like the Bermuda Beast, a colossal-sized monster 4 times the size of the Eiffel Tower that is capable of leaping out of the water and snatching up planes mid-air.
They look like gigantic crabs, but with tentacles. Seems to be some kind of shark mutation. But the crabs look at you as if they're plotting something.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Up first is a bound behemoth. This massive serpent was initially identified as a green anaconda, but one look at that immense head should tell you this is no ordinary snake. This behemoth was recorded at over 30 feet in length and weighing over a ton. Anacondas simply are not known to grow that large. This has led to some of the more creative to speculate that this could in fact be Titanoboa, or at least one of its descendants. The king of snakes allegedly went extinct 60 million years ago, but it may have passed down its enormous size to other later species, eventually leading to this massive beast being discovered by a Brazilian construction company. Sadly, it seems to have gotten more than a little squished during its capture. It was so massive the snake actually required heavy machinery to lift it out of its burrow. It's unclear whether it was squashed and then recovered, or if it was captured and then accidentally squashed. The snake is currently being studied by nearby researchers, hoping to discover what exactly made this snake grow so incredibly huge, and are there others of the same still in the Amazon? Next is a trapped terror. Humans never cease to both amaze and horrify me. Maybe it's because I'm from the city and not rural Brazil, but when I have a serious snake problem, I call someone else to deal with it. I don't set a trap with twine and PVC pipe with a chicken as bait. You can call that cowardice, but I personally think these people are just built different. After laying the trap, it turned out to be far more successful than they anticipated for, and now they're left with a gigantic snake tied down in their backyard. And this is why I hire professionals. But these people weren't totally unprepared, and they do end up getting the snake under control. And by under control, I mean roasting in a lovely stew. Unfortunately, that means this specimen is not available for further study. However, on initial sighting, many have said this looks indistinguishable from numerous claimed sightings of Titanoboa, raising many concerns as to just what the people of the Amazon are having to deal with. Some have even said this is merely a juvenile, an immature specimen well short of the fabled 40 to 50 foot size of Titanoboa. Next is spanning the Amazon. This may be some of the most compelling footage we've seen in a very long time. This video shows an unimaginably large snake swimming across the fast-moving Amazon River and slithering up onto the bank on the opposite side. While some have speculated that this could be a hoax, perhaps an animatronic or some sort of deceptive visual trickery, many, including the original poster of the footage, insist that the creature is an as-of-yet unidentified massive snake. The size of this reptile is truly staggering, far too large to belong to any known species, and it would easily surpass the largest anacondas or pythons on record. Some believe it could even be a living example of the prehistoric Titanoboa, the largest snake ever known to have existed, though it is likely to be a juvenile if that theory proves correct. At this point, little more is known about the incident, but there is hope that further sightings may shed light on the snake's true identity and its origins. Next is the Borneo beast. This is the largest snake to ever have been seen on the island of Borneo, a place with an abundance of snakes. Initially, no one believed that it even existed, despite the eyewitness account of a schoolboy, and so there was no initial panic. However, when the schoolboy returned, having taken this footage while hunting through the woods for the same snake, fear and panic ensued. The concern was understandable, as snakes can be a severe threat to not only the villagers' livelihoods, but also to the villagers themselves. Soon the footage had gone viral, and the Indonesian government was requesting that the snake be captured for study. However, capture is not exactly in the lexicon of the rural Indonesian villagers, who are used to ending snakes on sight due to most of them being venomous, and so the snake was not recovered alive and intact. Despite this, the snake's remains have been brought to a research station in South Sulawesi in order to further study this genetic and scientific marvel. Next is the city serpent. No one could have expected that what would start as a series of bumps in the night would progress to this utter nightmare nightmare fuel. The tenants of the house spotted the very tip of the tail of the creature and mistakenly believed that it would be a small snake hiding out in their attic. Instead, once the professionals arrived, it was revealed that an utter behemoth, larger than any these people had ever seen before, had been calling their thin ceiling home for weeks. The experts began expertly yanking and tugging on the snake's tail, trying to extract it, ideally without harm to the snake or the dwelling, only to fail miserably in both regards. The dwelling is definitely damaged, as it seems like the entire ceiling drops out from under the snake, and I'm sure the snake didn't enjoy getting dropped onto the rubble of its former nest, aka the ceiling tiles. The snake continued baffling researchers after its recovery, as it seems most similar to an anaconda, and yet there are no anacondas in Thailand. Next is the hillside horror. This enormous snake was discovered on the farm of a Bolivian rancher, casually slithering through the backcountry fields and grazing pastures. The rancher, who had been dealing with missing cattle for months, feared the snake might be part of a larger problem. Perhaps other massive creatures were preying on his livestock. Deciding to follow it, he trailed the serpent for several minutes until it finally led him to a stream bordering his property, and there he found an entire den of snakes with half a dozen burrows dug into the bank, each seeming to hold a massive serpent. One immense snake, clearly swollen from eating, was coiled at the center of its den, having gorged itself on one of his cows. Terrified, the rancher immediately stopped letting his cattle into the stream area, choosing to water them instead by hand from then on. However, the issues have persisted. The discovery only confirmed his worst fears. There are other behemoths in the area, and his cattle are clearly no longer safe. And finally, the living legend. This snake is mind-blowingly large, and by mind-blowing, I mean that this creature seems almost too unbelievable to be real. It should be a hoax, yet everything we see in the footage suggests otherwise. The snake is clearly alive, mobile, and actively slithering into what appears to be some sort of den. The quality of the footage is absolutely fantastic, but it also raises some serious questions about the existence of such a massive reptile. Given that this footage was captured in Bolivia, it's possible that this could be one of the newly described northern anacondas, and if that's the case, it would be a striking example of just how large these snakes can grow compared to their more commonly known southern relatives. The snake in the video seems to be well over a foot in diameter and could potentially exceed 40 feet in length, which, if accurate, would place this snake squarely in the size range expected of Titanoboa, the largest snake to have ever lived. While Titanoboa was likely even thicker and more massive around than this one, the idea that such an enormous snake could still exist in the wild begs the question, if something this big can live today, why not another, even larger species? Why not the Titanoboa?
Clifford Lebrec claimed he'd been watching a creature for about 2.5 months on the outskirts of Des Moines, Iowa back in 1977, and over the years, there was only more and more sightings. So one night, Lebrec decided to fire at the creature. Allegedly, it was about 25 feet away from where he was parked in his pickup truck, and two creatures walked up from behind a hedge. One stopped, but the other went to a woodpile, bent down, and started to eat it with its back towards Lebrec. So he stayed in the car, waited for it to turn around, but it just kept on gnawing at the wood. So finally, he decided to fire at it from behind, and when the animals turned and saw him, he got crazy buck fever and just couldn't do it. So as it came towards him, he couldn't really get the window rolled up fast enough. It was apparently really close, and Lebrec was obviously petrified with fear as the creature advanced. Allegedly, it loomed over the car, and it was about 8 feet tall. It reached through the window, grabbed Lebrec, and shook the daylights out of him. Yeah, it was a very strong creature. He could feel its face about 6 inches away, and to quote him, he was in a state of tremendous fear. He could feel his whole body shaking. He felt a sensation of being twisted around and pushed onto the floor. The creature was angry, obviously, because you tried to fire at it, and then our witness passed out. When they regained consciousness, it was gone. Lebrec, who owned a truck brokerage firm, is also president of Bigfoot Research Incorporated. He's been researching Bigfoot reports for about 49 years, and the thing that attacked him was terrifying and enormous. He said that after the attack, his memory was kind of vague because of his terror, since the thing was shaking him around, so he decided to visit a hypnotherapist, Eric Elster of Knoxville, Iowa, who was the expert in our situation. Elster stated that he hypnotized Lebrec so that he would go back to the time of the attack, and Lebrec was able to design and construct a life-size model of the creature based on the details that came to him under hypnosis, as well as what he obviously consciously remembers. So he made a model of fiberglass that was covered in artificial hair that allegedly represented a typical young adult male. The model stands about 7 foot 6 inches, and if it were a real creature, would weigh like 600 to 1,000 pounds. And its feet, of course, are what gives the creature its name. They're about 18 inches long, 9 inches wide, and they leave a flat impression of the ground, like 2 inches deep. Allegedly, Bigfoot's fur is dark brown in color and it has a very foul smell. So on this model, the shoulders measure about 4 feet across, the arms, which are about 47 inches long, reach down to almost the creature's knees, its biceps 27 inches around this fun area, and the massive neck has a circumference of 40 inches. According to our witness, Bigfoot can make a wide variety of sounds. It can mimic other animals, but its typical voice is a low guttural growl. But sometimes it can sound like a hooting owl or even a barking dog. Lebrec estimates that there may be as many as 5,000 Bigfoot creatures in the United States and more in Canada. And Lebrec believes that no remains are ever found of Bigfoots that have passed because they either bury or hide their dead. And during Lebrec's search for our elusive creature, he has investigated numerous reports of sightings. Allegedly, he searched for 15 years before finally meeting Bigfoot face to face. So this creature obviously exists, and it's thriving at great numbers and increasing all the time. Lebrec thinks that the Bigfoot is a very intelligent creature and tries very hard to avoid contact with humans. It's almost as if the beast has some form of primitive telepathy or instinct that warns it when a man is nearby. But despite the attack, Lebrec is still not afraid. He's like, I harvested what I sowed. It's like picking a fight and getting the heck knocked out of you. In November of 2009, Greg Warner and his team reported on and supplied photographs of a giant snake event near the jungle city of Iquitos in Peru. The photographs showed a trail at least 5 meters wide, and they also provided video evidence to support their photos and eyewitness accounts. So this creature is believed to be a Yakumama, which is an enormous serpent believed to be the mother of all aquatic animals. According to legends, this creature would suck up any living thing that passed within 100 steps of it. So to protect themselves, local folks would blow on a conch horn before entering any body of water, believing that the creature would reveal itself if it was present. So the video we have for you today is in Spanish, but I managed to find a translation of what happens so we can dissect it. So in the human settlement 24 de Mayo, the dwellers got into a panic when they saw that on the enormous swamp located at the back part of the settlement, there was a huge silhouette of dragged grass and mud that was clearly visible, and they attributed the event to the creature. Although some folks were like, no, it's a gigantic boa and it just guards a small pond. Well, one eyewitness claimed it started to move like this, circulate until it found a way out over there. And you cannot say there is a channel over there. As you can see, it was plain. And this is the trail that it made. Look, it looked like it wanted to get out that way, but turned over there. It took all this way, it took all this. If you keep walking that way, you can see it remained like this. But before, it was not like that. Look, this is clearly further evidence that the black boa, Yakumama, Sakamama, and Minhokao are one and the same in terms of cryptid classification. All regular description and photographic evidence points to this conclusion, but that doesn't make it any less scary for those of us who are terrified of snakes. An interesting video has emerged from Mexico that shows what appears to be a small bipedal humanoid scurrying across a road. So this video was reportedly captured in January of 2024 by a security camera at a farm in the city of Monterey and subsequently offered online back in May. A dark form exited from a wooded area on the side of the road, then quickly made its way across the dirt path, and then it vanished back into the brush. Simpson style. Many believe it to be sightings of duende, a humanoid figure of folklore that is comparable to goblins, dwarves, gnomes, or even leprechauns. So what do you think it is? Fun fact, in Spanish, duende originated as a contraction of the phrase dueña de casa, effectively master of the house. Or it could also be derived from some similar mythical being of the Visigoth or Swabian culture, given its similar looks with the tomte of the Swedish language, which is depicted as a mischievous spirit inhabiting a dwelling. Turns out, Spanish folklore is rich in tales and legends about various types of duendes. Anjanas, buscosos, dianos, enanos, elfos, hadas, gnomos, nubaros, and many, many others. On April 2nd of 2024, TikTok influencer Nightmare Fuel uploaded a strange 1-minute video they had received from an unnamed fan. And in the comments they wrote, a camera was set up facing the river in Namor-ong after many people said they saw spirits in the river. And this is a river where many people have lost their lives over time. And the camera captured this, an unbelievable sight. And we have it for you. So some folks believe that they were referring to Lake Namor on Lolobau Island in Papua New Guinea. No date is given, though it's thought to have been fairly recent, and it's kind of unclear what exactly the creatures in the lake are, but they do appear to have large eyes that upon surfacing reflect the light. They swim about, submerge, emerge, and occasionally look at the camera. The activity seems fairly harmless, all things considered. YouTuber Maximum Fear featured the footage on his channel in a video titled Newest Disturbing Creatures Caught on Trail Cam 2024, and wrote, "At some point, we can even see the eyes on the creatures reflected. They just slowly swim around with their long, straggly hair covering most of their face and head, and their pale white skin is slightly seen beneath." So a lot of folks are like, what could this be? Because once again, the river has a dark past, and folks think they might be paranormal manifestations of the lives lost, or they could actually be the creatures that are responsible for a lot of the disappearances and deaths. Maybe the land is cursed, maybe these are some sort of weird evil entity. No thanks. And finally for today, we have a video from August 2014 that was taken near Port Renfrew in British Columbia, Canada, and according to the witness transcript, it's something to see. Wendy and her husband were driving back from Port Renfrew, and there were a lot of creeks and streams flowing beside the road where they were driving, and Wendy suggested going for a little hike beside one of those streams. And while the duo were doing so, she's like, let's go further into the forest. She was feeling adventurous. So about 200 feet in, they spotted something ahead of them. And at first they were like, maybe it's a bear. But then they're like, no, it's a little more upright, kind of interesting looking, has a bit of a cone type head. So you watch the video, you decide. Allegedly there was kind of a musty smell in the air that wasn't strong, and the duo are adamant that this creature was not a bear.
The first one sounds silly, but dolphins. So this is when you combine a false killer whale with a common bottlenose dolphin, a wholphin. Sure, most of you assumed it was an actual whale combined with a dolphin, which is fair. Though I gotta admit, when I first heard of this, there was a small part of my brain, at least I hope a small part, that briefly thought it might have meant a wolf mixed with a dolphin, which, yikes. This is a wholphin right here, Kekimailu at Sea Life Park in Hawaii. That's mainly where you find these hybrids. They're usually created in captivity specifically for marine parks or aquariums because it's an attraction. It's not great, especially because there's already a lot of ethical issues with animals being held in captivity at places like this, so you know, they could do tricks for people. Breeding these dolphins isn't something that would happen in the wild, since false killer whales and bottlenose dolphins are very different in terms of behavior and geography. It has been known to happen rarely, but not very often. In captivity, human intervention makes it very possible though. Wholphins often deal with health problems and have a higher mortality rate compared to their parents. It's another example of humans messing with nature for novelty's sake, and it rarely ends well for the animals involved. Human-animal hybrid chimeras. Yes, this sounds like something out of a movie, but it's very much real. These are creatures created by combining human and animal cells, leading to beings that have both human and animal parts. Imagine a pig with human brain cells, or a sheep with some human DNA. It might sound wild and highly unethical, but this kind of research does have its benefits, especially in areas like stem cell research and organ transplantation. For example, scientists hope that growing human cells in animals could eventually lead to growing human organs for transplants, but it does raise concerns, mainly with the extent to which we mix human and animal DNA. In the US, the Human-Animal Chimera Prohibition Act was introduced in 2016 to address these concerns. The bill aimed to prohibit creating these hybrid organisms, as well as transferring human embryos into non-human animals' wombs. The bill didn't pass, but it's clear that people are pretty divided on this issue. We'll have a few cases of human-animal hybrids on this list, including this next one. A human combined with a chimpanzee. Seems like something that could work, right? I mean, they were already so genetically similar. In 1967, scientists in Shenyang, China supposedly managed to impregnate a chimpanzee with human sperm. The goal was to create a more advanced chimp that might be able to speak and even go to space for experiments. Now, this story is hard to verify, but according to the scientists involved, the chimp did get pregnant, carrying a human-chimp hybrid. Unfortunately, the chimp died after 3 months, and the lab was destroyed during the Cultural Revolution, so no human Z ever came to be. It's a crazy idea, but considering we share 98.8% of our DNA with chimps, who knows what could have happened here? Could have had a whole new species on our hands. Still, it's hard to say if this story is true or just a wild scientific rumor. Next up, let's talk about the zonkey. Again, this sounds very silly, like something from a Dr. Seuss book, but these things have and do exist. A zonkey is the offspring of a male zebra and a female donkey, or vice versa, though you can also get variations from horses, resulting in names like Zorse or Zedonk. Now, these things aren't as bad They're cute for one, and they do seem like a fun kind of creature to create, but there are some ethical concerns here too. One of the biggest issues is that these hybrids are often sterile, meaning they can't reproduce naturally. That raises the question, what's the point of breeding them then? It's not like they're able to create a sustainable population, and on top of that, hybrids often suffer from health problems due to the combination of genetic traits. The whole thing can feel like breeding animals for novelty or profit rather than for any real purpose. There's no clear benefit to society having these creatures around other than as a bizarre curiosity, and again, they are pretty cute. Rabbit-human hybrids, yes, this was a thing. Back in 2003, scientists in Shanghai managed to fuse human cells into rabbit eggs in a lab, and it worked. These embryos survived for a time long enough to be harvested for stem cells, but no one really knows how long they could have lived or if they would have developed past the embryo stage. Imagine a world where right now there's this 21-year-old half human, half rabbit creature out there in Shanghai, I guess. Scientists never let it develop further, possibly because the idea of a rabbit-human hybrid was just too freaky, or maybe they did continue the experiments in secret. Who knows? There could be entire underground labs full of these creatures just waiting to hop away. Picture it, a mangy, almost hairless rabbit with a human face. Or maybe don't picture it, if you want to sleep, that is. Mice with human livers. This one's actually kind of fascinating. Back in 2010, researchers at the Salk Institute of Biological Studies in California managed to genetically modify a mouse so that it grew an almost human-like liver. Why? Well, it was part of an effort to create a more ethical way to test diseases that primarily affect humans and chimpanzees. Diseases like hepatitis B, C, and malaria. In the past, scientists would have had to use chimps for this kind of testing, but with these modified mice, they could still run similar experiments, just on mice. Testing on animals is never ideal, but it's still a huge step in the right direction, reducing the need for primates. These mice with their human livers could be used to study human-specific diseases and try out treatments that might work on us. It's a pretty big deal in the medical field and could lead to real breakthroughs in treatment and prevention. It's going to bring us to another mouse-related hybrid. This time it's mice with human brains. Yeah, it turns out we actually got pretty close to making Pinky and the Brain come true before our eyes. Don't we all want that? I think sometimes scientists just figure why not? Let's just do it. Back in 2014, though, scientists were able to imbue several lab mice with millions of human brain cells. The mice lived, too. After about a year, almost every cell in their brains was replaced by human ones. Now, my human brain automatically goes to these mice now performing complex math equations, doing dance routines, talking. Unfortunately, that's not what happened, but their memory got way better, which is still cool. The way the scientists tested this was by playing a certain noise. Then they'd send a small electric shock through the mice. The next time they played the sound, they took note of how the mice reacted. The ones with human brain cells would remember that electric shock came after the sound and they'd brace for it. The regular mice wouldn't, they just couldn't make that connection. Ligers. No, these are not just from Napoleon Dynamite. A liger is the offspring of a male lion and a female tiger, and while they are pretty cool to look at because they're just huge and the fact they kind of look like a fantasy creature, they tend to have some serious health issues. Ligers can grow to lengths of 10 to 12 feet and weigh up to 900 pounds, and that much size puts a huge strain on their bodies, especially their organs and bones. Their hearts also have a hard time supporting such a large frame, and on top of that, their size can cause difficulty in breathing, arthritis, and a short lifespan compared to their wild parents. But the real ethical issue with ligers is how they're bred. They don't occur naturally in the wild, meaning these creatures are made in captivity purely for novelty and profit. Two-headed dogs, not your typical hybrid, but equally disturbing. This experiment comes from Vladimir Demikov, a Soviet scientist who was pushing the boundaries of surgery back in the 40s and 50s. He was a real-life mad scientist who would do crazy experiments, like he'd keep a dog's head alive for hours, completely separate from the body. He'd surgically And, of course, he'd surgically attach the head of one dog onto another, creating a real-life two-headed dog. His goal was to explore organ transplantation and see how the body would react to these extreme surgeries. His work was groundbreaking in the medical world, but my god, was it creepy. Creating these bizarre creatures for the sake of scientific curiosity without considering their well-being is incredibly cruel, obviously. And these dogs didn't live long after the surgeries, and it's hard to look at these creatures without feeling deeply uncomfortable. It was an early example of what happens when the desire to push scientific boundaries crosses into disturbing, morally questionable territory.
It was said to be a giant limbless frog or toad with a bat's membranous wings, sometimes even a bird's feathery wings, and a long reptilian tail with a large stinger at the very tip, so it leapt across the water using its wings, hence its name, and its favorite prey were fish, poor sheep who wandered too close to the water's edge, or even fishermen. And don't look at me, I don't fish. It was said that its appearance alone was enough to strike one dead, never mind its venomous stinger or crazy screech that could have you doing this. This being was also said to really badly shriek. By the way, that shriek would stun its prey, and it would leap up from the water, it would snap the fishing line of fishermen, dragging whatever poor soul into the water's abyss, only to be speedily engulfed by a malignant and quite insatiable big mouth. Now, I don't know if there's been any modern sightings. It might be an extinct situation, maybe an endangered situation. Whatever it is, I'm not tempting fate. In Northern English folklore, the Barghest or Barhest is a mythical monstrous black dog with large teeth and claws, though in other cases the name can refer to a ghost or household elf, especially in Northumberland and Durham. So in terms of the origins of the name, ghost in Northern England was pronounced guest, and the origin is thought to be of the combination Burgest, town ghost. Others explain it as similar to the German Berggeist, mountain ghost, or the bear ghost. Another derivation is Bargeist, German for spirit of the funeral bier. So in Yorkshire, England, one notable case is said to frequent a remote gorge named Troller's Gill in the Yorkshire Dales. A ballad entitled The Legend of the Troller's Gill can actually be found in a historical book, and it has to do with all of this. The ballad recounts the tale of a man who ventures forth to the horrid gill of the limestone hill. I did say it was a song, right? In order to summon and confront the Barghest in an act of ritual magic. The man's lifeless body is discovered soon afterwards with inhuman marks upon his, chest. There is also a story of a Barghest entering the city of York occasionally, where, according to legend, it preys on lone travelers in the city's narrow snickleways. Furthermore, the building at number 1, the Shambles, is named Barghest. The town of Whitby is also associated with the spectre, and yet another one haunted an area of wasteland between Reghorn and Headingley Hill near Leeds. In Durham, during the 1870s, a shape-shifting Barghest was said to live near Darlington and was said to take the form of a headless man, who would vanish in flames, a headless lady, a white cat, a rabbit, a dog, or a black dog. Another was said to live in an uncanny-looking dale between Darlington and Houghton near Throstlenest. If I got it wrong, I'm sorry. The Barghest often allegedly serves as an omen of death. At the passing of a notable person, it may appear, followed by all the other dogs of the local area in a kind of funeral procession, heralding the person's death with howling and barking. Also, if you're gonna get in its way, it's gonna strike out with its paw, and you're gonna wind up with a wound that never heals. Besides taking the form of a large black dog with fiery eyes, it might also become invisible and or walk about with the sound of rattling chains. Oh, and it might foretell the death of an individual by laying across the threshold of their house. And like the vampire, they can't cross rivers. So, good to know. If your dog crosses the river, it's a dog. If not, get out of there. The Rougarou legend has been spread for many generations, either directly from French settlers to Louisiana or via the French-Canadian immigrants centuries ago. Rougarou represents a variant pronunciation and spelling of the original French loup-garou, which is the version I heard about when I was younger at summer camp. It was a fun French camp. According to Barry Jean Ancelet, an academic expert on Cajun folklore and professor at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette in America, the tale of the Rougarou is a common legend across French Louisiana. So both words, so loup-garou and Rougarou, are used interchangeably. Everybody's got their own preference. Just so we all don't get confused today, I'm just gonna stick with Rougarou for the purpose of the legend. So in the Cajun legends, the creature is said to prowl the swamps around Acadiana and Greater New Orleans, specifically the sugarcane fields and woodlands of the regions. The rougarou most often is described as a creature with a human body and the head of a wolf or dog, similar to a lot of modern werewolf legends, and often the storytelling has been used to inspire fear and obedience. One such example is stories that have been told by elders to persuade younger generations to behave. So according to another variation, the beast will hunt down and kill Catholics who do not follow the rules of Lent, and this coincides with the French Catholic loup-garou stories, according to which the method for turning into a werewolf is to break Lent 7 years in a row. For what it's worth, I've been ignoring Lent for much longer and I'm not a werewolf. I'm part vampire, not part wolf. Long story. Anyways, a part of the legend says that the loup-garou is under the spell for 101 days, and after that time the curse is transferred from person to person when the loup-garou draws another human's life source. During the day, the creature returns to human form, and although acting sickly, the human refrains from telling others of the situation for fear of being killed. Other stories range from the loup-garou as a rabbit to the loup-garou being derived from witchcraft. In the latter claim, only a witch can make a loup-garou, either by turning into a wolf herself or by cursing others. I don't want to be cursed. In the folklore of Lee County, South Carolina, the lizard man of Scape or Swamp, also known as the lizard man of Lee County, is an entity said to inhabit the swampland of the region. On July 14th of 1988, the sheriff's office investigated a report of a car that was damaged overnight while parked at a home in the area of Browntown, outside Bishopville, South Carolina, on the edges of the swamp. So the car reportedly had tooth marks and scratches, with hair and muddy footprints left behind. The sheriff at the time, one Liston Truesdale, noted that this was the start of various claims that eventually snowballed into a story about a lizard man in the swamp. Prompted by the news of the vehicle damage, local Christopher Davis reported to the sheriff that his car was damaged by a creature he described as green, wet-like, about 7 feet tall, had 3 fingers, red eyes, skin like a lizard, and snake-like scales. Oh, and it happened like 2 weeks prior. So according to Christopher, he was driving home from working the night shift at a fast food restaurant when his car got a flat tire. And after fixing it, he saw this creature walking towards him. He got in his car, began to drive, but then the creature was soon on top of the car. So Christopher hit the brakes and the creature rolled off, which gave Christopher enough time to escape. Well, coverage by newspapers and media resulted in really increased attention for the claims. Local businesses began selling Lizard Man t-shirts. The local Chamber of Commerce was like, okay, well, it's good for the community. Fast forward to 2009, CNN mentioned the Lizard Man legend in a story about a couple in Bishopville who reported damage to their vehicle, including traces of redness. 2015, local television station WCIV featured photos and videos claiming to be Lizard Man, allegedly taken by some unidentified individuals. 2017, the South Carolina Emergency Management Division sent out a humorous tweet being like, hey, just be careful during the solar eclipse, you might want to remain vigilant for Lizard Man. So looks like he's still creeping around. And the Shug monkey is a mythical creature in the folklore of Cambridgeshire, sharing the features of a dog and a monkey, which reportedly haunt Slow Hill Lane, which leads from the village of West Ratting to nearby Balsham. So this creature, said to have the body of a jet black shaggy sheepdog and the face of a monkey with staring eyes, is not believed to be an escaped primate. But, you know, it's kind of terrifying. Local writer and broadcaster James Wentworth Day, who first related stories of the Shug monkey in Here Are Ghosts and Witches, described it as a curious variation of black Shug, while local folklorist Polly Howitt suggests that maybe there's some origins in Norse mythology here. Local police constable, a tailor, who heard the stories, was like, yeah, it's a cross between a big dog and a monkey with big shining eyes. Sometimes it shuffles along on its hind legs, other times it whizzes past on all fours. Okay, well, if you see that, run!
Up first is the Vacanti mouse. The Vacanti mouse is a true once-in-a-lifetime creature, one which will likely never be seen again. What it looks like, and what it was reported as initially, was that scientists were growing a human ear on a mouse's back, but that's not really the full story. This isn't a bioengineered mouse, it's instead an example of the use of biodegradable scaffolding. Researchers injected a biodegradable ear-shaped mold with cow cartilage cells, which was then implanted on the mouse. Eventually, the the mold would break down, leaving just the cartilage behind. Another mold was placed on the outside to encourage the false ear to grow properly, but which was removed for the photo ops. This was in 1996, so you could excuse the researchers for not exactly being prepared for how viral and controversial this would become. This image was one of the first viral images on the internet, and was part of the explosion in anti-genetic modification protests and agitation. The experiment served two purposes: advancing our understanding of underskin splints and frameworks, and teaching scientists that they can't always just show whatever cool thing they're working on to the general uninformed public. Next is the Murdile crocomade. This unique crocodilian had a fascinating but unfortunate mutation. During its development, its tail went haywire, splitting into two tips connected by a web of skin. This has made the crocodile appear much more like a mermaid with a whale-like tail. The only issue? That's not really how crocodiles work. They don't paddle up and down like a whale, they go side to side like a fish or a snake, meaning that sadly this very unique and interesting mutation is likely far more of a hindrance than a help, and we certainly won't be seeing mermaid crocodiles become a common sight. That is, unless of course this isn't just some random mutation. Animals which lay eggs can be at a special risk to pollutants, as they can be far more exposed to them in their early development. It may be that this mutation, along with others, could become more common as pollutants increase. That's just a possibility, but it does seem strange that such an extreme mutation would only be discovered for the first time in the modern age. Next is the four-legged chicken. Looking like something straight out of Warhammer Fantasy, this four-legged chicken is a polymelic anomaly. It suffers from a genetic mutation known as polymelia, where too many limbs, or limbs of the wrong sort, grow. In this case, an extra set of legs grew out from the rear of the chick's pelvis, leaving it with 6 limbs, 4 legs and 2 wings. They're small and stunted, and likely will not grow with the chick as it increases in size, remaining as small dangling limbs from its rear. Unfortunately, these malformations are not clean-cut affairs, and growing legs where they shouldn't be can cause some pretty serious health complications. Shocker, I know. These chicks' legs grew out over its vent, where it expels waste, making it difficult for the chick to conduct its functions. Sadly, this caused the chick to pass at 2 weeks old. Next is jaws. Two-headed sharks are massively unusual and incredibly rare. It results from a split along the axis of the head, leading to 2 skulls connected to the same body. A mutation this massive is usually accompanied by severe medical issues, if not other worse mutations. Malformed or misconnected spinal cords, organs, and more all spell doom for the two-headed shark. And yet, they're only becoming more common as time goes on. More and more sightings are happening closer together over the past several decades. Now, there are 2 possible reasons for this. Either two-headedness is suddenly much more advantageous, which is almost certainly not the case since an adult two-headed shark has never been seen, or something has changed causing an increase in these mutations. Well, I bet you'll never guess what changed. Maybe a little something called industrialization and the endless increase of corporate profits? It's highly likely that contaminants from industrial waste have seeped into the waters and are increasing the rate and risk of these critical shark mutations. Next is mutabuck. These strange, unnatural-looking bucks are exactly that, genetic freaks bred for one purpose. Hunters like to score their deer by the number of points on their antlers and the width of those antlers, because back in the day, a deer with wide, many-pronged antlers was likely a strong and competitive buck that had survived several winters, making it a glorious catch. But now, deers are being bred in captivity and sold off to high-paying buyers to stock their fenced-in land or to increase the points on the offspring. These extravagant bucks, some with 88 points or more, and with massive, oversized antlers, are purebred for those antlers, suffering all manner of genetic inbreeding issues. A single half straw of genetic material, though, from one of these hyperbucks could sell for thousands of dollars to a breeder, making these abominations of nature massively beneficial cash cows for those that raise them. When released to the wild, these bucks are often ended by much stronger but far less impressive wild bucks. Next is the double dino. It turns out it isn't only modern animals that suffer from genetic abnormalities, giving them doubled legs, organs, or even entire heads. This is Hyphalosaurus, a marine reptile from the Cretaceous, which was seemingly born with 2 heads. This find is extraordinary on so many levels. Just for this animal to have been born and then be covered in sediment soon enough to not only fossilize, but to also avoid being eaten by any other scavenger or predator is simply incredible. But not only did this specimen survive intact to be buried and turned into a fossil, it is also a shockingly well-preserved fossil. This is the equivalent of finding 50 fossilized four-leaf clovers back to back to back. And finally, Clawsome. This lobster clearly decided at birth that having 2 pairs of claws was for cowards and weaklings. Obviously, lobster strength is decided by how many claws they have, and this lobster was determined to be the strongest. Instead of one big crushing claw and one smaller cutting claw, Lola the lobster, because yes, every animal has to be named, decided that she wanted to be more like the humans who now take such good care of her, and grew a 5-fingered claw-like hand instead of a cutting claw. Now, obviously Lola didn't really decide on anything, and this is a congenital deformity, but it still is pretty amazing to see a lobster with a 5-fingered hand. It's very lucky for Lola that she was caught when she was, as though the one crusher claw is certainly still powerful, without 2 functioning claws she likely would not have lasted long in the open ocean. But now she gets food catered to her in exchange for letting snotty-nosed kids gawk at her deformity, just like the days of freak show carnivals. While not a living creature per se, this phenomenon shocked scientists when it was first discovered. As seawater freezes, the salt and other impurities are forced out by the solidifying ice crystals, causing sea ice to be spongy and full of holes, unlike the solid structure of freshwater ice. As the ice forms, a supercooled, super saline solution flows down through the hollow ice and eventually breaks through to the area beneath the glacier. As this supercooled salt water flows downward, it creates a chimney of ice that freezes around it, adding even more salt to the flow. Once it reaches the ground, however, the real chaos begins. The supercooled salt water floods out, coating the starfish and urchins on the seafloor. Those that do not flee fast enough become permanently and often lethally entombed within these pillars of flowing ice. Eventually, the movement of the glacier will crush or snap these root-like pillars, but as long as this movement doesn't occur, the pillars are free to grow to truly immense sizes. Next is Campylobacter jejuni. Zoonosis refers to diseases transmitted from animals to humans, but what many may not realize is that reverse zoonosis, humans infecting animals, also exists, is quite common, and has caused surprising damage to global ecosystems. Even more disturbingly, multiple human-vectored diseases have been discovered in Antarctic animals, including penguins, albatrosses, petrels, and squaws. This has raised significant concern, particularly with the discovery of Campylobacter jejuni, the leading cause of food poisoning in Europe and the Americas. There is a serious risk that unprepared Antarctic populations, animals with no immunity or familiarity with these new diseases, could suffer heavily under the weight of multiple plagues. As human presence and tourism in Antarctica continues to grow, the risk of these destructive reverse zoonotic transmissions only increases. Up next are deep water currents. Deep ocean currents are another serious risk posed by cold ice meltwater, which is steadily degrading and disrupting those critical flows. The increase in very cold fresh water is having disastrous effects, slowing down and weakening these vital currents. Fresh water is less dense than seawater, which reduces the rate at which this cold water sinks, thereby weakening the entire system. The flow of cold water is crucial for the functioning of the global climate, as its increased density pushes down on the column and helps to circulate essential gases throughout the deep sea, impacting ecosystems and weather patterns worldwide. As this current weakens, so too will others, including the warm water currents that help keep Europe so mild. Without this current, Europe would experience a climate much more akin to Canada, while African nations could face much higher temperatures. The decline in deep water currents also means less gas exchanges taking place, potentially leading to large sections of the ocean becoming anoxic, or lacking oxygen entirely, which would have catastrophic consequences. Furthermore, weakening currents around Antarctica makes it easier for non-native species to invade the ecosystem, further destabilizing these delicate marine environments. Next is Totten Ice Field. Sea ice melting is, as we know, one of the greatest threats to the world's oceans. It raises sea levels, decreases salinity, and introduces more cold water than is typical, disrupting oceanic balance. Recently, though, scientists discovered something particularly chilling: a massive glacier glacier field in Antarctica known as the Totten Glacier Catchment, which holds more ice than the much more famous West Antarctic ice sheet, is facing a serious threat. Scientists have found deep sea channels beneath the ice that are allowing a flood of warm water to seep into the catchment. This is a major concern as it will accelerate the melting of this glacier field. If all the ice in the Totten catchment were to melt today, global water levels would rise by more than 11 feet, potentially flooding and completely wiping out many low-lying coastal cities around the world. Next is the Ventusky Wave Anomaly. Ventusky is a meteorological app that allows users to track the height of waves around the world's oceans. For the second time now, a very strange anomaly just north of Antarctica has been recorded. A massive 80-foot tall crescent-shaped wave that spread out and moved farther north. People immediately began speculating wildly, suggesting it could be anything from aliens to a megalodon or even a leviathan. However, the makers of Ventusky quickly burst everyone's bubble when they revealed that the anomaly was simply an error in their system caused by incorrect data from German meteorology, either misentered or inaccurate. Those darn Germans. Despite this explanation, some still believe the anomaly was real and argue that the company is now trying to cover up a massive wave in the South Atlantic. Next is Wilkes Gravity Anomaly. A negative gravity anomaly was detected under the ice of Wilkes Land, and it has scientists stumped. It may sound a little sci-fi, but there are actually gravitational anomalies all over the world, and they can help us discover some pretty interesting things. If the Earth were actually a totally smooth, homogeneous ball, then gravity would be experienced the same all over the planet. But Earth isn't smooth or homogeneous, and gravity isn't consistent. These gravitational anomalies are small shifts away from the predicted ideal gravitational value, and can be used to find dense ore deposits beneath the Earth's surface. Other things can also cause anomalies though, like caves or caverns where the Earth isn't as dense as it should be. A positive anomaly means gravity is stronger than expected there, maybe due to a mountain or dense elements underground, while a negative gravitational anomaly means gravity is weaker than expected. This could be for any number of reasons, but usually an unseen void in the Earth is the culprit. In the case of the Wilkes gravity anomaly, scientists still aren't really sure what's causing it. However, the most plausible theory is that of an old meteor crater. Scientists aren't sure what's causing it. However, the most plausible theory is that of an old meteor crater that was then frozen over by ice from the Ice Age. Still, no one's really sure what's causing the anomaly. And finally, the crab crisis. If you've heard of king crab, then you know just how invasive they can be, but if you think that would be bad, just wait for the European green crabs. These crabs are being farmed in South America, meaning they're not that far from the Southern Sea, and they're even more successful colonizers than their larger cousins, the king crab. Green crabs reproduce twice as often and are generally smaller, which allows more individuals to fit within a given space. Unlike king crabs, they're also less likely to completely collapse an ecosystem, which would lead to their immediate local extinction. Instead, the green crab is perfectly poised to slowly invade and take over an entire ecosystem. However, a few conditions would need to be met in Antarctica first. The sea will likely need to warm, and the crabs will have to adapt to colder temperatures. They would also need to be introduced in some way, as the seafloor is too deep and cold for them to walk all the way from Chile. But don't think that this makes it safe. Green crabs are frequently accidentally transported as stowaways in ships' ballast tanks, making their spread even more unpredictable and likely.
3 years ago, a Maine trail camera captured what seemed to be a mysterious creature. Guesses ranged from a fisher cat to a porcupine, maybe even a beaver. But, what actually is it? The Bangor Daily News shared an image that was caught on Norman Tremblay's trail camera that he got for Christmas. And Norman describes whatever it is as creepy. Some folks are like, maybe it's a chupacabra. Is it a real thing? Is it just a legend? Now, I'm hoping for the real thing. Apparently, according to Wikipedia, it was first seen in Puerto Rico back in 1995, which means it's been traveling a long way. The name is because of what the animal does. It attacks and drinks the redness of livestock, also goats. It literally translates to goat sucker, by the way, which kind of fun. So Norman was pretty concerned that something so creepy would live on the land that he owned, and he truly had no idea what it could be. By the way, this was all captured in Lowell, over in Penobscot County, and I probably got that wrong, I'm sorry folks. Now, since Lowell is only about 40 miles or so away from Stephen King's home, apparently this creature might be a gargoyle that escaped from the King of Horrors wrought iron fence and headed for the forest. But I guess the jury's out on that one too. Norman's guess is that it's a fisher or a fisher cat, but according to the experts that I checked, it looks a little too chubby for that. And then he's like, oh, maybe it's a porcupine. But One important thing about porcupines, they have quills. This thing had no quills. Once again, everybody keeps bringing up that it's pretty close to where Stephen King's house is. So maybe it was some sort of weird creature that exists on his land that inspires his movies and his books. But to this day, nobody's identified what the heck it could be. You've heard of tigers, right? But have you heard of fire tigers? So these golden predators are just a golden cat. But they're quite rare. A trail camera recently caught one on film in Thailand's Khao Sok National Park. According to the Department of National Parks, Wildlife and Plant Conservation, this golden cat is a rare wild animal on the verge of extinction. Apparently, this species is near threatened, and the population trend is decreasing. These golden cats are about 16 inches tall and weigh up to 33 pounds. And even though we call them golden, they're typically golden to reddish brown in color, with black lines on their face and a white-tipped tail. Rare forms of the golden cat tend to be dark brown or even black, which black cats are so freaking cute. So in a Facebook post announcing the sighting in the national park, the Department of National Parks, Wildlife and Plant Conservation say that historically, local people have considered the animal to have more ferocious behavior than large tigers. Okay, I guess they're less cute now. Fire tigers are primarily nocturnal, but this one appears to be out during daylight hours. They consume rodents, birds, reptiles, insects, and small mammals. Now, also apparently they hunt animals larger than themselves, such as wild deer and wild boar. So steer clear, folks. They live primarily in subtropical and tropical evergreen forests, and their range extends from like Nepal and northeast India to Southeast Asia, China, Thailand, Malaysia, and even Sumatra. The Voyagers Wolf Project admits it's stumped. A strange animal has made multiple appearances on the organization's trail cameras, but the wolf experts say that this is no ordinary wolf. A recent Facebook post sharing video footage of the strange animal suggests it's likely a wolf-dog hybrid roaming the wilds of northern Minnesota. So a werewolf? This was one of these stranger observations we had. A wolf-like, dog-like canid of sorts roaming the area, at least according to the video caption. Sort of looks like a mix between a wolf and a Malamute or something. So the organization's first two observations of the animal came from much earlier this year. February 29th, March 3rd, and at times the wolf-dog hybrid was roaming with a couple of other adult wolves. In fact, at the beginning of the video we have, you'll see a regular wolf approach the camera, followed by the hybrid, followed by a third regular looking wolf. And then according to Facebook, we then had 10 observations of this animal by itself from March 11th to the 20th, all across the greater Voyagers ecosystem. So this animal was roaming substantially. But then after that, the animal left the area, because they haven't seen it since. Notably, we have never seen a wolf that looks like this, but we suspect that this canid is either a wolf with some strange mutation that makes it super fluffy and extra large, which seems unlikely, but hey, they're trying to think through options, or it's a wolf-dog hybrid. Once again, folks, may I remind you, Lugahu, werewolf, all options. A rare sighting from deep in the forest of Borneo has given conservationists hope that the vulnerable clouded leopard is on the prowl. In April, the Orangutan Foundation and Tanjung Puting National Park captured video of a mother and two cubs hopping through a thicket. One of the cubs even stopped to take a long look at the camera. So this clouded leopard is on the International Union for Conservation of Nature Red List of threatened species. The animal is endangered partly because of its low recruitment rate. Few adults produce and raise offspring until they're like 2, and then they join the breeding population. Deforestation has also taken its toll on the leopard, which relies on forests for habitat, and the foundation said in a news release that more than 2/3 of the animals have been killed in recent years. On Instagram, it was noted that this was the first time a mother and offspring had been recorded. So according to the experts, for the population to be reproducing is an incredibly encouraging sign. Clouded leopards are known for their long tails, which can match the length of their bodies, and their teeth, which can reach up to 2 inches in length. The canine fangs are the longest of any feline, or at least according to the Felidae Conservation Fund. The big cats prey on monkeys, deer, pigs, and sometimes birds and reptiles. And population estimates are all over the place, but it's as low as 3,000. This sighting shows how important trail cameras are for scientists and researchers, who kind of rely on it to track species diversity and distribution. A similar trap in Nigeria recently showed a pair of the rarest apes in the world. An ape-looking figure believed to be Bigfoot has been captured walking up a hillside in the US. Fascinating footage taken by a woman named Kelly, who was hiking through the Blue Mountains in Oregon with her daughter, was published on YouTube by the channel Rocky Mountain Sasquatch. And most folks can't believe our eyes. The blurry but fascinating video was recorded at a remote campground and shows a creature walking up a hillside. Now, Kelly initially thought it was a human, so she took out her phone to zoom in closer for the sake of her skeptical daughter. And what she saw when she zoomed in wasn't a human, it might have been Bigfoot. So the guys at Rocky Mountain Sasquatch, who are like constantly on the hunt for more evidence that the elusive creature exists, were super duper impressed by the footage, as were enthusiasts. There was one comment at Belverine765 was like, the creature on the mountainside does appear to be injured or maybe carrying something. The pixelation from the zoom makes it impossible to tell for certain, and this is the reason our hairy cousins are the world champion hide and seek champions. Keep up the awesome work. At Charlie Baltimore 7641 said, this is amazing footage, great catch. It almost looks like it has something in its left hand. At first I thought it had a tail, but I don't think that's right. Either that or it has really big hands. Huge thighs though. Thanks for sending this in. So I did some research and it turns out Bigfoot actually really does like to hang out in Oregon. The history of recorded sightings in the area dates back to at least 1904, when settlers spoke of a wild man near the river. Hairy Bigfoot-like creatures also appear in local indigenous folklore. Encounters have been reported all over the state since then, largely in wooded areas, far from towns and cities. And also the most famous video of an alleged Bigfoot sighting, the Patterson-Gimlin film, shot in 1967, well, it was just south of the Oregon.
The glowing jellyfish. Okay, we've all seen or at least heard of a jellyfish before. Some of you may have even been stung by one. I've been there and believe me, it's not pleasant. And no, that trick doesn't work. Don't even try it. There's one jellyfish you never want to bump into, and that, my friends, is the glowing jellyfish. This one's definitely not your average run-of-the-mill kind of jellyfish. In 2016, scientists were surveying the waters near the Mariana Trench when they saw what looked like a glowing flying saucer. Something about this creature looked alien and it caught the eyes of experts. But as it turns out, it was not an alien, it was just this new, undiscovered jellyfish splayed out with its tentacles ready to sting unsuspecting prey. I personally think that it's an alien, but we'll talk about that later. Inside the bell of this jelly, you can see some bright yellow bulb-like lights and some bright red markings as well. Again, makes me think that it's an alien when there's a light inside of it. The jelly also has two kinds of tentacles, one short and one long. Barrel eye fish. Okay, this guy is a very, very weird looking fish, and that says a lot when we're talking about the deepest part on Earth. The barrel eye fish is also known as a spookfish, rightfully so, and they of course get their name due to their appearance. The fish are relatively small and best known for their extremely unusual transparent fluid-filled heads. Yeah, they have transparent fluid-filled heads. That's an alien. Sounds like an alien if you ask me. When these fish were first discovered, there were so many questions surrounding them, obviously, and at first scientists thought that their eyes were fixed in one spot, but after further research, it was determined that they are able to rotate both up and forward. Yeah, a fish that can look at you like with its eyes can come out of its head. That's terrifying. The fish is usually found motionless, hanging out in depths of around 600 to 800 meters, or 2,000 to 2,600 feet in the ocean. This fish has been known for quite some time, with the first discovery coming all the way from 1939, but it wasn't until 2004 that a photographer got an actual photo of a live one. Now finally the world can see just how unique these guys really are. And by unique, I mean disgusting and terrifying to look at. There also used to be many drawings of these fish, but never with their transparent head because of the fact that it gets destroyed as soon as the fish is brought up from the depths. So not that I think anyone's gonna go diving in the Mariana Trench soon, but if you do, try not to bring these guys up from their home because they're happy down there with their heads fully intact. Imagine that. Don't go in the ocean or else your head will just explode. Okay, no problem. Say no more. Ghost fish. Okay, well of course I had to include a deep sea ghostly creature. Why not? This one is super cool. This little ghost fish was caught on camera in 2016 as it was casually swimming along a ridge around 8,200 feet deep in the ocean. Now the fish itself is around 10 centimeters long and has translucent, scaleless skin and the creepiest, colorless eyes I've ever seen on any animal. Here's the craziest thing about this whole ordeal though. It was the first time that a live fish from its family has ever been seen before. Ever. This little fish swimming along, minding its own business, has absolutely no idea that he was a huge discovery for the human scientists back up there. There's still so much that is left a mystery about these fish, but any kind of new discovery is always a step in the right direction, despite how terrifying it may be to look at. The owlfish. These creepy looking guys are often referred to as stout black smelt, as they are species of deep sea smelt, but their owlfish name comes from their extremely large eyes in relation to their body size. This fish does look the most alien. The eyes alone make me never want to swim in the ocean ever again. Even lakes, why not? I'm never swimming in anything again. You got me. These eyes are able to capture even the faintest glimmer of light, which isn't the most common occurrence in the deep, dark depths of the Mariana Trench, but this is what helps them spot and capture their prey, which are usually small crustaceans and jellies. What might seem friendly at first glance, or friendly-ish, it turns out they pack quite the punch. Here's a clip of one fighting a black-eyed squid. And no, the squid didn't get the black eye from the fight. He came that way. Anglerfish. If you've seen Finding Nemo, you might recognize this one big time. This guy scared the life out of me when I was a kid, but it turns out they're even scarier in real life. This bony fish is known for its luminescent horn that is used to lure other fish as prey. It's like a disco ball, it attracts everything. If I was swimming down there, I would go check it out, that's for sure. There are different kinds of anglerfish, but those who live in the deep sea are referred to as sea devils, which truly feels fitting when you look at that face. The females are much larger than the males and can reach up to almost 4 feet, while males can only reach up to 5 inches. But these little sea devils are able to eat prey on the same size as itself. That's crazy. I couldn't eat a 6-foot anything. Maybe a 6-foot sub, but we'll talk about that later. That's way too much food. Luckily, most anglerfish remain so deep in the ocean that they're not a threat to humans. Love to hear that, there's some good news. And even if they did live near the surface, most humans would just be too big for them to even try and attack. It sure doesn't mean that they aren't crazy to look at though. And just to add some more about how strange these guys are, these fish reproduce when the male fuses into the female and lives off her resources until it can produce sperm. Yeah, talk about clingy. And last but not least, arrow-tooth eels. The arrow-tooth eel that resides in the Mariana Trench are a species that of course is not well known, due to living in the middle of the earth. Now these eels range somewhere between 23 to 160 centimeters in length. They're bottom-dwelling fish and can be found in the waters around 3,700 meters, and they're different from other eels in their early stages because of their telescopic eyes during the larva stage. Yeah, you heard me, telescopic eyes. How alien is that? These guys like to feed on the scraps left over from another larger fish meal as well as invertebrates, but they've also been known to be partly parasitic as they sometimes burrow into the flesh of other fish. What's with all these fish becoming attached to other fish? Why can't you just be alone and stable and do your own fishy thing? Why do you have to involve others in your little life quest? Ugh, so creepy. Imagine something going in your skin. I'm out, no, we're good. Here's a clip of one swimming past a camera that's located at around 11,000 meters deep. Check it out.
Like in 2022, footage was shared of the bottom of the Mariana Trench that showed a huge shark swimming around, which many are claiming is a megalodon. Some believe this footage, which has emerged after being filmed in 2018, is proof that the sharks are not extinct. Now the footage shows a shark swimming over what appears to be an abandoned shark cage. Then, as the camera jolts upwards, the beast's terrifying white eyes are clearly observed. An estimate of the shark's size was made based on the dimensions of the cage, and the footage was reportedly shot by Japanese marine biologists. It was apparently filmed a mile down beyond the reach of sunlight in the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of our world's oceans. Now, one person commented on the video, "Our oceans are huge and there are vast areas that are still unexplored. I wouldn't be surprised if there are megs still out there." But others say this creature is simply a common sleeper shark, which can survive at least 2,000 meters beneath the surface. But it makes sense to me that this beast would be way down there though, and regardless if it is the meg or not, that shark is huge and terrifying.